And welcome to the Dr. Tech Show, where myself, Pauline Roche, and Sweyn Hunter, and sometimes guests, guide you to the world of online communications and digital inclusion in a show, which was the brainchild of the late, great and Muslimist John Popham. So we usually start the show with asking about the weather. So I'm very happy to ask our special guest today, Dr. Sarah Watts, what the weather is like where you are. Sarah, where are you and what's the weather like there?
Hello, I'm in Tamworth today, and actually it's quite a nice day. It's a bit chilly, but the sun's out. It's quite a nice bright day.
Okay, I think we missed where you said you were.
I'm in Tamworth in
Tamworth.
Staffordshire.
Okay, lovely. And Sweyn, what about you? What's the weather like and where are you?
I'm in Orkney as usual in Kirkwall. It's grey. It's quite a stiff breeze. It's not very warm. It's one of those nothing really days. Not spring, that's for sure.
Okay, well, here in Birmingham, I've got blue skies, some cloud, but blue skies, and I was out on the water yesterday in the canal, so I'm hoping to keep up the weather for that sort of thing over the next few weeks anyway. So yeah, very, very nice to be here, and welcome to all of us today. So Sarah, we will come back to you in a few minutes. Please relax and kind of enjoy the start of the show as we cover some dates that we have picked up that are happening around this time. Sweyn, do you want to lead off, or will I?
I think you should lead off, Pauline.
Okie doke. So 26th of April, tomorrow, is World Intellectual Property Day. And across the globe, young people are stepping up to innovation challenges using their energy and ingenuity, their curiosity and creativity, says the blurb, to steer a course towards a better future. And this year, the World Intellectual Property Day's 2022 theme focuses on IP and youth innovating for a better future. And in this, they'll explore how these innovative, energetic, and creative minds are driving positive change. And if you visit the website, you can find out how young inventors, creators, and entrepreneurs can use intellectual property rights to achieve their goals, generate income, create jobs, tackle local and global challenges, and support community and national development. So yeah, I'm keen for people to have and own their intellectual property, and for young people to celebrate the innovations that they can make. On the 28th of April this week, we have International Girls in ICT Day, and this is from the International Telecommunications Union. And for girls and young women to thrive in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics careers, they need safe and reliable access to the internet and digital tools. So that's why, in consultation with youth, the union identified access and safety as their theme for girls in ICT in 2022. Every year, the ITU and their partners work together to develop solutions and ideas for lowering barriers to access and improving safety online for girls and young women. And we know that'll be something that our friend Simon Finch, who often comes on the show, will also be helping people to think about today, or on that day, which is the 28th of April. And moving on, we have picked up an event, the empathy economy. We had a guest in a few weeks ago, Dr. Jackie Taylor, talking about the empathy economy, which is a move on from the shared economy. And you're welcome to go back and listen to that Dr. Tech Show on YouTube if you wish. But she's doing her first Profit for Purpose LinkedIn audio event where she'll be answering your questions about what you need to do next to create growth in your business and what it takes to run a profit for purpose impact business, which is the key to creating the world we all want to live in. So we highly recommend that on Wednesday, 27th of April at 12:30. Jackie will answer questions. And I think a lot of people won't have heard much about this so far. So we're encouraging people to tune in, follow Jackie on all the socials. She's very active there, well worth following anyway, and we think you'll find it of great interest. Okay, and so without further ado, we welcome our special guest, Dr. Sarah Watts. Sarah is a consultant clinical psychologist and is the clinical lead with the Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent Wellbeing Service. She's currently seconded part-time to NHS England as clinical lead for talking therapy services in the West Midlands and is the programme director of the postgraduate diploma in cognitive behavioural therapy in Staffordshire. Sarah has worked in Staffordshire for 12 years and prior to this worked in older people's services in Warwickshire in inpatient and community teams. And outside work, Sarah has two sons who play hockey, and she can often be found on the side of a hockey pitch nursing a flask of coffee in all weathers. So very welcome to the show, Sarah. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So Sarah, we I think we connected probably on Twitter, where you are very active, and where we also are. And we picked up something, I think, about a device that we talked about in the very, very early days of this show called the Comp. And we were very interested to see that that you were talking about that and having one available. So do we want to go straight into that, or do you want to tell us a bit about the service for a bit, and then we'll go into the Comp?
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about the service first, if that's helpful. So,
yeah.
So our service in Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent, every area in the country has a service like ours. It's a primary care talking therapies service. It's known as an IAPT service, and that stands for Improving Access to Psychological Therapies. So we work with people who are age 16 and over. We don't have an upper age limit, with people who are presenting with difficulties related to anxiety and different anxiety conditions and depression. So we see a lot of patients in the last 18 months. I was looking the other day, we've seen 45,000 patients through our service. So we're quite a busy service. And we've got somewhere in the region of 340 therapists working in the service across the whole area. So we're quite busy. And obviously, as all health services were, we were very impacted by COVID and by the lockdowns as things started to happen. And really, that's where we came into improving our digital offer quite a lot more. We have been open during most of the pandemic. We've had very short periods of time where some of our offices have had to close for various reasons. But we understand that particularly perhaps for our older and our more clinically vulnerable patients, they haven't wanted to come in and see us. And sometimes with psychological therapies, it's not appropriate to do them over the telephone. You need to actually see somebody to have those conversations. So we were very lucky. We were very well supported by our trust, Midlands Partnership Foundation Trust, who very quickly got a video consultation system into place called One Consultation, which is fantastic if you have an iPhone or you have an iPad. But if you don't, it's not so easy. So we started to look quite quickly at solutions for people who perhaps didn't have an internet connection at home, so that they could still receive a video consultation. And that's where our relationship with the Comps came into play.
Fascinating. Well, I know we're going to have a demonstration of the Comp in due course, so we don't want to rush into that. Let's kind of reel back a bit and talk about your own digital journey, if you like, because we know that kind of people don't just land into working using online systems and so on. What's your early involvement with working online? What's your, were you a young coder or something like that? How was your interest developed?
Yeah, well, I mean, no, I'm not really trained in digital or in tech. It's something that's come to me through working in the health service. And really for us, it's been about increasing access for people who perhaps live in more rural areas or where public transport is poor. So our trust is very forward thinking in terms of innovation and technology, and is very quick to say, we've got this, do you want to try it? And it's something that we've adopted because it really has increased our offer. So, I mean, there's been lots of digital developments actually during the pandemic. For example, now we have an online self-referral system, which you'll have seen on the website that I know you've just shown. So people don't even have to go to their GP now. They can just contact us directly online.
There's a huge self-refer button, so that's good.
Yes, yeah. All people need is a GP in the Staffordshire area. That's what they need. And they need to be age 16 or over, and then they can just contact us. So that's, really for us, digital has been about increasing access and getting to people who perhaps wouldn't ordinarily come forward for psychological talking therapies. So it's really hugely helped in helping us to get contact. For example, new parents who maybe have a baby to look after, and maybe it's quite hard to get someone to look after a very young baby, to travel to an appointment, have an appointment, get home again. Those appointments can happen now online. Or as I say, for clinically vulnerable people who are perhaps a bit anxious about coming into a clinic setting or a community setting, it means they can still have their appointment now at home. So it's increased what we can do for other people a huge amount. So I think talking therapies have been very much face-to-face, really, up until COVID. And actually, if there is a positive to come out of this pandemic, I think it's been the digital developments within health services and social care that hopefully are supporting people to access things in a way that are easier for them.
So you've said how it's improved access. Are there any losers in this situation? I mean, I think it's clear. I mean, I would say this. I live in Orkney, and our nearest serious hospital is Aberdeen, and it's a plane journey away. And obviously, everything that can be done remotely should be done remotely, really, as far as I'm concerned. In that way, and all sorts of horror stories about appointments being cancelled because planes didn't go and all that stuff. You know, it's just all taken out of the equation. Is there anybody though who you feel that particularly during the pandemic, and as you come out of the pandemic, is there any sort of, as it were, losers, people who feel that they're put off by this way of working, or have you not come across too much of that?
Yeah, we've had a few things that, I mean, during the pandemic, one of the biggest issues we had when most people were in lockdown, was that people didn't have a confidential space at home, even if they had access to a device or they were able to kind of log in to a comp or online or whatever. A lot of people weren't able to come forward because, you know, they didn't want to talk, say, for example, with their children in the house.
Sure.
So that was more complex. So we did have less people come forward at that point in time. Those people are now thankfully coming forward again. I suppose the other area that concerns me a little is perhaps where services have become overly reliant on digital and aren't offering a face-to-face offer alongside it. I think for me, it's about patient choice. You know, we offer telephone, we offer comp, we offer one consultation, and we offer face-to-face. And I think, you know, some people love digital and they're very happy with it. Some people feel if they're not very comfortable with digital, maybe they're a little bit, you know, suspicious of the system and perhaps the confidentiality of the system as well. And obviously that's all been checked out, and these systems are, you know, completely confidential. But you can understand people who perhaps aren't too familiar with working online feeling, you know, a little concerned about that. But I think for me, it's about patient choice. If you're offering all of those things, then it means people can engage with what suits them best.
I'm really happy to hear that, because I work a lot with older people in my work outside of this show, and they want choice. They do want the choice. They want to know that if they don't want to do it online, if they don't want to use a machine, that they can speak to somebody face to face, and they know that it's more economical to do a digital service, but they don't see why that should be the consideration, basically, because they feel entitled, and I think they are entitled to a non-digital service. And I tell them that most institutions have been, you know, directed to offer a non-digital service for people who want that, and I encourage them to assert their rights, you know, to ask for a service like that. And I think that's good to know that you're conscious of that as well, Sarah.
Enthusiastic as we are for all things digital, it's not suitable for all people for all things. It's just not. So we need to remember that. Yeah,
because we know that, like, a lot of people came online, especially during the lockdowns, not willingly. You know, it was kind of born out of the fear and the kind of the difficulties of face-to-face during lockdown. So it's not a good basis for any kind of service to build it on fear and sort of, you know, difficulty. So now we know we are glad when people have choices and they can, you know, choose which way to access the service. So what kind of successes have you had with comp, particularly, Sarah, that you can tell us about?
So it's been hugely successful, actually. In fact, we've just taken an order of 14 more this week, because we've just had to buy some more because we've had so many people wanting to use them. So initially we brought them in for, as I say, older people and clinically vulnerable people who perhaps were struggling to get into face-to-face appointments during lockdown. And we had a couple of therapists that trialled them initially, and the feedback from the therapists and the patients that used them was outstandingly good. So we thought, well, we'll get some more. It's kind of expanded slightly. There are some areas within our geography where there aren't very good internet connections, and even if people do have an iPad or an iPhone, it's not a reliable connection for perhaps an appointment that's going to take 50 minutes. So we've made more comps available in that situation as well. And actually, quite often in those areas that the comp connection is far better than anything else that we can offer them. So yeah, really by popular demand from the patients, we've just had some more delivered.
So can you just explain very basically what the comp is and exactly how your service users would access it and access you through it?
Absolutely, yes. So most people would self-refer to us, so they would either ring us up or they'd contact us via the website, and they'll have an assessment with a clinician, fairly quickly after contacting us. And as part of that conversation, there will be a conversation about how would you like your appointments to take place, back to the patient choice. And if people say that they're not able to get to us and they'd like a video appointment, but there's some kind of barrier, we'll start having the conversation about the comp with them. And the way that it works, our admin team administrate how the comps work. So they have a bank of them. And what will happen is we'll arrange a time with the patient for them to deliver the screen to them. So I've got the screen just behind me here, which I'll show to you in a moment. And that will be delivered out to them. And then they will have a test appointment with one of our administrators, just so that they can test it out and they feel confident in how it works and what they need to do. And it is the easiest device to use, it really is. And then they will keep that for the duration of their therapy, which might be, 6 weeks up to 20 weeks. You can do nothing on it other than log into your appointments with us. It's not a device that anybody can do anything else with. But then once the appointments are finished and the patient's been discharged, the admin team will go back out and pick it up and prepare it ready for the next patient.
So it's a box with a couple of buttons. It's not a...
It's a screen with one button on it. Yeah, it's got one button. It's a button you turn, and you turn it for on and for the volume, and then at the end you just turn it off again. It's a very simple. It's advertised. Everything else is done from our end, so that there is nothing else the patient needs to do.
It's advertised by the manufacturers, the suppliers, as the one button computer connecting the generations. I think originally their use case was that your older relative would have one of these in their home, and you would, as a family, you would communicate with them that way. But that's a really interesting use that you've described there of the device. Did you consider other? I mean, did you consider other possible ways of connecting? And I mean, I think you mentioned that you'd used a particular route very early on in the pandemic, which you've developed the comp service from out of. Was there any at that point where you were developing on? Was there any other contenders other than the comp in your thinking? Or
I think there were. I mean, we had a project team, obviously, early on within the trust, looking at what will the best options be. I'm possibly not the best person to talk through what those were.
That's fine.
I wasn't part of that group.
That's fine. No,
but yeah, they did look at different things.
That's interesting.
And this was the one. I think the older adult team within our trust trialled the comps first and found them to be, reliable, which is what we were looking for. One Consultation is a fantastic, consultation system, but the connection with the comp seems to be far more reliable. So that's how we came to have.
It certainly seems that you've taken out any sort of, as much as you possibly can, of the kind of user issue and the connection issue and all that stuff, because comp is engineered to be just this one push button thing. And I think I can quite see the attractions from a service provision point of view of that. So it's great to see a service actually pick it up and run with it and have a go.
Yeah, I thoroughly recommend it, I have to say. I think, I can see we've got 14 more this week. I suspect we'll be putting an order in for some more before very long, because we're almost having to operate a waiting list for them now. So, they have become very popular.
And are other services learning from you? Are you able to, share your learning with elsewhere in the trust or elsewhere in the country?
Yes, there are other services in the trust, I know, that are using the comps now. Like I say, I think the older adult team are, and there are various other teams that are starting to pick them up and use them. And yeah, we talk all the time with colleagues in other trusts about, what we're doing, and we very much promote these as a good option for people who may struggle for access otherwise.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
On the screen, when Sweyn shared the screen, it said £39 a month. So if somebody wanted one themselves for other reasons, they could have one. Has there been any interest from users about getting a comp of their own once they're finished with the one that they get from your service?
I've not heard that yet, but it's a very good point, because actually it would be a good way to stay connected, wouldn't it, for people who don't have devices at home? And actually it's, I suppose with the cost of living issues at the moment, it's perhaps, an expensive consideration, but in terms of connecting with family, if you're not seeing people very often, it could be a good a good option for people who are perhaps quite isolated or quite lonely to stay connected with their family and their friends.
Yeah, I think when we talked about it in the early show of the Dr. Tech show, I think we were thinking it might be suitable for a care home, for example, where you know, people might be isolated, but they could contact their family through that.
Definitely.
Yeah. So we're going to get a demonstration of the device.
Yes.
Is that going to be happening?
Yes, we can do that now. Let's see if it'll work. So I don't know how clear the screen will be. I'm going to move to one side so that you can
I'm
see.
going to try something I've never tried before on one of our programs, which is to spotlight you, to pinpoint you. So you will go full screen if I can get this to work.
Okay, so, right. Well, I'm going to
carry on regardless.
let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I move that down, so can you see the screen there?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a big silver button just at the bottom here, and all you have to do, you switch this on until it clicks. It'll start to come into action. You'll see something in a moment. There we are. The screensaver's just got the date and the time on. And then so the patient will switch this on, you know, a couple of moments before their appointment time. Here's Hannah, who's my therapist for today, who's going to be calling in. There's a little countdown at the top of the screen to let them know they'll be appearing in 10 seconds.
Okay, so they don't have to do anything, it just comes on.
We can see all this very clearly now in YouTube, so I'm pleased about that. Yes, please carry on.
Fantastic. And here's Hannah. So all I had to do there was switch the button on just at the required time, and then your therapist will call. So Hannah's called me, you get the 10-second countdown, and then she will appear on the screen. You can. So
Hannah is the therapist and you are the patient.
Yes, that's right. So I'm acting as the patient today. So she's doing all the hard work behind the scenes.
She's doing dead chuffed with that, I have to say.
Hannah, can you hear us now?
I can actually, yeah.
Okay, that's good. What did you have to do your end, Hannah?
We have a system called Comp Pro. So I do a bit of clicking on the right patient, the right device, and I literally just hit a call button, a bit like being on Zoom or another video platform.
Right, and then you contact Sarah. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So and what else can come up on the screen? I mean, can you show if you've got an injury, for example, Sarah? Would you be able to? Would you be sharing that with with the therapist, or what? Is it just talking?
What we do is usually just talking. I mean, it could be used in other health forms. The screen, I appreciate it may look a little blurred where you are, but for me sitting here looking at Hannah, if for example it was a GP appointment and there was an injury that needed it, I would be able to see quite clearly. Hannah, I don't know whether you probably can't see me because I'm out of shot, but it's very clear, isn't it? So you would be able to see things.
It's crystal clear. I can see the thank you notes on your it's crystal clear, and the other way around, I'm like, I must look quite high definition and scary.
Extremely good. I'm very impressed. Yeah.
I think it's important for us to say that we're viewing this through several technical layers of vagueness. So what you might see, what you'll see on the Dr. Tech show is not at all representative of the quality of the comp graphics or indeed the audio, but it's clear from how you're able to discuss things that it's very clear when you're actually in that call rather than in our Zoom call being streamed to YouTube. But each step of which will take some of the pinpoint clarity away, unfortunately. So that's really
right.
It's really good. It's really good.
Thank you very much. Thanks for showing us that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hannah. Bye.
Thanks, Hannah. See you next week. Yes.
So call ended, and
call ended, and that will come out with the and then all I need to do is turn the switch at the bottom here to turn it back off again, and that's it until the next appointment. So
so you don't have to worry about the you're not calling; they're calling you.
They're calling you.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. All you have to do is be there a couple of minutes before it's due to start so that you can take the call. But yeah, you don't have to do anything. And all you need to do is wait for the call ended sign to come up at the end and then switch off again.
Well, that was great. That's our. Yeah. I don't think we've had a live demonstration on the program before. I may be wrong.
No, another first, great. I think. Yeah. Great. So how many did you order? You ordered another 14. You said, Sarah. How many did you order in the first case?
Yeah, so we've had, I'm trying to think, because I've got 5 different teams that are spread across South Staffordshire. I think we're up to about 35 devices now. And as I say, I suspect they will all be out before very long. They're about to come in, and I think they're already booked to go out next week. So,
what kind of proportion of your active caseload would that represent? Or is that a silly question?
It's quite small actually, because we do have, we have numbers running into the thousands open service all the time. I suppose I should say I kind of work in the south part of the service, and the north also have a separate set of these. So I guess in the whole of the service, we've probably got about 50 or 60 devices now. So yeah, and really, they are available for people who can't access us via any other means.
Right.
But I can see this expanding, and I think the digital developments we've had come in during the pandemic, I think they're here to stay. I think they're things that we had to do initially because we didn't have any other choices, but now they've become a choice, and they're a choice that patients like to have. So I think we will be keeping them for the foreseeable future. I think we will be needing more, not less of them.
It's quite interesting because I'm sure there are examples somewhere in Scotland of something very similar to what you're doing, but generally speaking in Scotland, the NHS went down the road of adopting a run on any platform type video consultation service called Near Me. And it's interesting because they will have obviously just had to live with some of the issues you were talking about in terms of connection and does it run on my 14-year-old laptop, etc., etc., etc. But it's quite interesting because what they've got there then is something that they can use in a whole variety of different clinical contexts. I mean, what you've got there is specifically perfect for you, and hopefully it can be available to people like that. But the question, though, it's not quite related to what I've just said, is my question was, how have the clinicians found it in terms of the service and the therapy that they're providing? Have you had a range of opinions? Has it been universally positive? How have the professionals kind of reacted to this new thing, especially as we come out of COVID?
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, as with all teams, we have some people who are very digitally aware and very pro-digital, and some people who are less so. So I think we always encourage people to look at what the patient needs, and if they need the comp, then we will make sure the comp goes in. But all of our therapists who've used it, it's been universally positive feedback. Sometimes the difficulty with one consultation is that a patient has to access the appointment on their phone, and a phone screen is quite small. Yeah. And actually, if you're trying to pick up the nuances of how somebody might be feeling, particularly with psychological therapies, if you're trying to pick up what's going on or how they're feeling in any given moment, on smaller screens, it's quite hard for them if they've got the therapist on a very tiny device, whereas with this, it's a very big screen.
You know what the size of the screen is, and you know what the connection is, and it's a kind of a standard constant thing.
Definitely. So and as I say, because the connection has in certain patches been more reliable, we have some therapists who are using a lot more of the devices than others if they work in those areas because they prefer it because of the reliability, really.
So do you still have an option to access the service through other online digital means?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So we're still using one consultation.
Sorry, I'm being stupid here.
Okay. That's the kind of biggest platform, I guess, that we're seeing people on at the moment.
That's good.
So where people have a connection and can do that, then yes, we're definitely still using that. But yeah, this is an option, which is a good option when that doesn't work.
It's great. It's absolutely wonderful to hear all these different routes and things that, experiments turning into stable services and stable services turning into just how things are done. Are you under any kind of, there's been quite a bit of I would describe it as hoo-ha about GPs offering in-person appointments rather than online ones. I think this has been mainly, I have to say, in England. But are you under any pressure to do things more face-to-face as a default, or not? Or are you, or do your service have the freedom to just can carry on with this as it is, in your opinion, best for patients? Or is there any actual pressure on you to rein it back in and have more in-person appointments?
No, I mean, there is a national IAP team which oversees, kind of governance in all of the services like mine nationally. And they are certainly encouraging us to be, sorry, my screensaver's just come on. I'm just going to get rid of that so I can see you again. They're definitely encouraging us to be open, but their instruction is to provide patient choice. It's not that we have to do it any one way or another. It's to say all of these options should be available, and if a patient chooses it, you need to provide it. One of
our top 3 messages from this program, one of them is public libraries are brilliant, but that's for another day. But they've said it again. And another one, and more or less, is patient choice. Let the clinicians and the patients negotiate between themselves and come up with a range of things that work for everyone concerned. Then do a bit of research into it. There's been 1 or 2 bits of pieces of research that we've done. I think one of them was in women accessing contraceptive and sexual health services, that digital was really, really successful in. There's bound to be, there's in the specialties, there's bound to be things it's really good for and things which perhaps it isn't so good for. Like, I suppose, major leg trauma, it's probably not that brilliant to have a digital, maybe
Absolutely.
Towards the end of rehabilitation, maybe, but maybe, who knows. But for some things, and maybe talking therapy is one, if the therapists can make it work in a way that is satisfactory, clinically and professionally, and if the I was going to say customers, let's call them customers, the citizens, if the citizens want to access them that way, then that's great.
Definitely, and I think it works well for talking therapy, because people will usually be offered a weekly appointment for a set number of weeks. I guess other parts of the health service appointments may not be so regular, and so therefore, the comp devices, it's difficult to get them to people at the right time. But I suppose, another development we've had in service is actually the therapists needing to learn to work online, because people are trained to work face to face, and actually we've had to do a significant amount of training with people around how to work digitally, how to share your screen if you're working on something together that's written down, how to monitor what's going on for somebody when you're not in a room with them. So I think, part of my job in my teaching job with the training course is trying to now incorporate not only training therapists to work face to face, but training them to work digitally as well, because they're going to need to be able to do both in the future.
Yeah.
And what kind of issues have you come up with there, Sarah? Because I can't imagine it's not being all plain sailing.
No, that's not been plain sailing. People like me who've been qualified a very long time, we're used to working face to face, and it's tricky, and particularly if you're not quite so digitally savvy, it's a bit clunky. You're trying to share your screen and still listen to somebody and make sure you're paying attention and maintaining eye contact and all of those kinds of things. So it definitely does take some practice. And I think there are some things that people will come to us with as kind of presenting problems that are easier to work with face to face, and some that may be absolutely fine to work with digitally. And I think that's a negotiation really between patient and therapist as to what might work best. But I think the therapists we've trained, so we're on the 3rd cohort of trainees now who will have done at least part of their training either during lockdown or during the pandemic. The first set had started with us in the January as we went into lockdown in the sort of March, April. So they started face to face and then had to complete the training online.
Wow.
So we had to teach them online and try and still get them to the same standard as if we'd had them face to face in a classroom. The second cohort started online, and we only had them back in face to face for the last couple of months of their course. And this year we're doing a hybrid arrangement. We have 2 days a week for the training course, and they're doing 1 day face to face and 1 day online. And I think that's probably how it's going to remain.
That's great.
It gives people options then of learning both ways.
Yeah. So do you think, here's a silly question, another silly question from me. Do you think that without the pandemic, you would have got to this point?
Yes, but probably for not another 20 years. I think the speed that the NHS moves with things sometimes. I think we have to have a reason to do it for it to happen. I think if there hadn't been a reason, I don't think there would have been the same motivation to push it.
It's like a huge, very unethical experiment in digital, the pandemic.
It kind of is.
For all the terrific harm it's done, it has, I mean, what we always say in resilience and emergency planning is don't let your disaster, as it were, go to waste. Get something good, get what's good out of it, and make sure you keep it, because at least that way you can move forward a little bit in some ways for all the suffering and horror that there's been around it.
No, completely. And I think, and it has been horrific, in the NHS, it's been really difficult. We've not been obviously frontline on wards, but our service is one of the services that's seeing the NHS workers that have had to be in those positions. Of course. Yes. So we're still hearing about it. We still, we still know how awful it's been for colleagues. And, I think you do have to keep yourself going, you do have to try and see the positives in that, and the digital is definitely one of those positives.
It's good to hear.
Mm-hmm. So from a practical point of view about the comp, because there will be people listening to this who still won't kind of understand, and me as well to some extent. So the person has the comp box in their home that's delivered to them. What's at your end of the delivery of the service? Are you talking to them from a computer or another device or what?
It's from a laptop. So the administrators who run it and the therapists who've got patients who are currently using them are attached to this system called Comp Pro that Hannah just mentioned. And that's installed onto their laptop while they're using them or while they're administrating it. So what Hannah sees at her end, because she showed me it this morning, she has a big she opens it up on the screen, and she has a big long list. We've named all of the comps different things so that we know which one's which, and it will have the therapist name attached to it and a code for the patient, and then she can have a look on the list, see which one it is, click on that, or the therapist would click on that at the time of the appointment, and then there's just a little camera button that you press to say call, and then it connects a bit the same as Zoom would when you launch a meeting. Okay, great. And have there been any have they worked efficiently like most of the time? Has there been any issues, breakdowns, or devices not working? We've had one that's broken, but that's because it was dropped. It wasn't because of anything else. Other than that, we've had no issues with them. It's been very reliable, and also having the kind of setup with the administrator before the therapy starts means that if there are any difficulties, that's all kind of ironed out before the time of the appointment, so the patient isn't anxious about the first appointment. It should all be quite straightforward by the time that happens.
I suppose also, since you've got patients every week for a number of... Oh dear.
What's happened?
Since you've got patients every week for a number of weeks, then, almost you could imagine that the first half of the first session might well be familiarization and just kind of, in a way that it might be anyway, I guess, to a certain extent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but generally it's not needed, as I say, because that familiarisation is done in the pre-appointment. But if there are any difficulties, they can obviously be ironed out at that stage if needed.
That's really good. I was trying to find a picture of Comp Pro on a screen, but No Isolation, who make comps, are very keen that you see pictures of the comp and not the background. So that's fine.
So what kind of developments would you like to see going forward, Sarah? Can you see any opportunities for new ways of communicating online that maybe you'd like the Trust to be looking into?
I think my next move really with digital is to get an expert patient group together. Perhaps people who've used the digital, or people who would have liked to and have felt there's been a barrier to it in some way, because I think probably the best people to guide us in the next steps are going to be the people who use the service. We've done an awful lot of different things now. Lots of things happen online that we wouldn't have done before. We've never taught online before. Most of our meetings happen online. Our self-referral system, being engaged with social media much more during the pandemic as well, and actually being very available to people, that they can contact us there with questions or queries or anything like that.
It's quite a thing for clinicians to be on social media and stuff. It's
not common.
Have you encouraged that? Have you found a way through the difficulties of that, or is that a thing that is almost a specialism in itself?
Yeah, well, again, our communications team in the Trust, it was them that told me to get onto Twitter.
All right, okay.
It was our head of comms that said, you need a Twitter account, because I don't do social media personally at all. mainly because I'm a clinician, and
Yes.
you know, there are
Yes.
certain boundaries obviously around what
Yes.
you do. So my account is a professional account. I will occasionally put something a little bit more
Yeah.
personal on there, but you know, not usually about me or my family or anything. But
Yes, yes.
but yeah, no, they encouraged us to get on there. They've encouraged us to have a team account, because we do a lot of community events. We go out and about, we go to people a lot. So it's really around letting people know where we're going to be and when. Last week we took delivery of a bus. We've got a wellbeing bus now that we're going out and about in, again, to areas where perhaps public transport isn't so good. So it's basically a mobile clinic that we can take out. So we're able to let people know on there now where the bus is going to be and when, if they want to come and see us. So yeah, obviously there's rules and regulations around having an NHS social media account. But it's been so successful in so many ways. We've just taken on our own communications lead within our service, not just within the trust. So we've got somebody now who's overseeing that for us and helping manage that, so that we can be, you know, as available and accessible in a professional way as we can be.
Yeah,
I certainly found, I think, because we connected on Twitter, I think, I certainly found your tone of voice and your approachability very positive. So it's very important to have that, as a lot of people are a bit stiff on social media, but you have a very nice way of putting things. So it's important for people to feel able to ask you questions. Have you been asked, you know, kind of questions that you found unexpected, or, you know, can you remember any of the things that you talked about?
Yeah, I mean, quite often the thing about social media and being a clinician on there is obviously patients use the platform too, and sometimes there's some really interesting interactions that happen. I mean, there's been one happening this week around OCD, and interactions between kind of professional views and patient views of what might be going on. And you know, and actually what happens, there's some quite high profile academics and clinicians on Twitter who will join those conversations. You can find yourself having a conversation with somebody who was one of your heroes when you were training. It's quite unusual, you know. But I think that's the thing, it breaks down all the barriers, and you can have, you know, the UK expert on something talking with patients and people like me at the same time about different views. So it's a really good platform for educating and sharing views in that way, I think. I mean, occasionally we do get people contact us with perhaps a more personal question about their use of the service, and we would usually sort of direct them towards a phone call, or taking that away from the public arena, obviously, for their own confidentiality. But usually it's engagement around particular issues, or asking us where we're going to be, or, you know, various things like that, which is, you know, we found it to be a really positive thing, actually.
And is it just Twitter that you use, or do you use any of the other channels?
I only use Twitter, but the service have got a Facebook and an Instagram account as well.
We do find Facebook a useful place to ask questions as well, although we always another one of our things is to kind of warn people to be skeptical about what they read online, especially on Facebook, because misinformation or mid-information, which is a new term I picked up at the International Journalism Festival, where it's kind of, you know, they're not sure about whether the information is correct yet or not. So
it's something that might be misinformation.
It might be, but
true.
It might not be. Exactly.
Wow. Mid-information.
So but you know, be skeptical. You know, do your research. Don't believe everything you read online. You know, we encourage people to kind of have more than one source before they think that that's the gospel. But
so we've had public libraries are good, we've had patient choice, and that's our third one, really.
Be skeptical.
Our third theme is be skeptical of stuff that you read on the internet.
Well, I think that's another reason why it's good for clinicians to be on social media, to correct things sometimes. Dr. Google is sometimes the most dangerous doctor of all, isn't it? And actually, you know, to have people there who say, you know, this is a reliable source, have a look at this, or this is the received wisdom, or this is the nice guidance around this, it can be quite helpful.
And there's nothing more amusing on Twitter than watching someone trying to educate a world expert in their own field. In their own field.
Have you read this book? Yes, I wrote it.
Yes, I wrote it.
Yes, we've seen a few of those.
Yeah, they're always funny.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking of something else now, and it's gone out of my head. No, we're kind of waffling a bit now. There was something about you know, reliability of information. That's right, and sort of encouraging, because my background is in librarianship and journalism as well, and kind of knowing who your sources are and trusting those sources is such a it feels like a hostage to fortune sometimes, because we're encouraging people to be online, but we're also encouraging them to have skepticism. You know, they will be scammed. Oh yeah, this is the thing. WhatsApp. We covered the story a couple of weeks ago about family people being fooled by kind of someone purporting to be a family member who's got their number and says, you know, this is my new number, I've lost my phone or it's broken or whatever, just use this number from now on. And then eventually at some stage, either that message or next message, I need some money to pay a bill, can you send me this money?
Gosh.
So encouraging people to be to have skepticism around that. And what I've started to do with my friends now is if I send them a link in WhatsApp, I also send them a word, a code word or something. It sounds like, you know, kind of secret spies, but anyway, that reassures them that it is me sending this message and not somebody who's trying to take advantage of them. So, you know, there's those kind of techniques of, as our friend Simon Finch would say, you know, expect to be scammed, and what are you going to do about it when that happens?
Yes.
So have you had to warn people about, you know, being careful online? What you know about that kind of thing? Has it come up in the work?
We do sometimes. I mean, we sort of really try and encourage people not to randomly Google things about what's happening with them. We say to them, if you want information, let us know. We'll point you in the right direction. We'll show you the sources that will give you the information. So yeah, I think it's good for people to be online and to be aware of what's going on, but also good to be aware of the fact that you can find anything you want there if you look for it. And if you want actual proper sources that are based in the evidence, then there's ways of finding those. You know, there's certain social media accounts that will always post that. You know, if somebody contacts me on Twitter and says, you know, what could I read about this? You know, I'll send something back that, you know, that's something evidence-based. So I think over time, the longer you're there and the longer you have a presence on social media, people get to know who the people are, that, you know, who the clinicians are that are on there that you can ask these questions of. Obviously, we can't give personal information or comment on personal situations, but if it's a recommendation for, is there something I could read about this, then obviously we can do that if people find it helpful.
That's really helpful.
It's really important that there's people in all disciplines really able to do that, because otherwise it really is the Wild West.
Yes, definitely.
Right. So I think Sarah, we've got a few minutes before the show finishes, so we'll cover some of the other stories that we've picked up along the lines, and please feel free to join in on the comments. Are you okay with that, Sweyn, if we go to some of the stories we've had on the grid?
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, great. Okay, so the first one it has the famous title, Computer Says No, which we're familiar with from a certain TV show. And this is actually on bbc.co.uk, the iPlayer. And it's saying that if you're applying for a job today, your application could go through several stages before it's being seen by a human. And so the BBC journalist, former recruiter Daniel Henry, looked into the world of algorithms and computer automated hiring, looking at the first stage of a job application and writing your CV. So he was given tips from University of Liverpool, the student career advisors, about how best to tailor the CV so it isn't rejected by software. So this is a new way of applying for jobs that most of us won't have had to think about. So stage two, after this initial stage, is often a video interview, which refers back to what we were talking about earlier, which again could be marked automatically on the basis of a computer program searching for keywords. So there are two places where you need to be aware of what you're saying and words you're using. So in this program, it's a series of exclusive interviews. Daniel reveals the story of 3 former employees of MAC Makeup who lost their jobs in part due to a video interview which uses the facial analysis technology. They were discussed as their interviews were not even reviewed by a real person, and the women involved took legal action against Estee Lauder, eventually reaching an agreement outside of court. So there must have been some not very good stuff going on. HireView, which was the platform used in this redundancy process, defended their platform against any accusation of bias, but they've since dropped their facial analysis technology from their products. So with the rollout of AI hiring speeding up, Daniel was keen to look at the accuracy of technology that might be used by companies, and with the help of academics, he discovered how race, gender, and emotion can be misinterpreted by some facial analysis technology, and he finds that voice transcription services still struggle with accuracy when faced with regional UK accents. And finally, the journalist meets Ollie, who is autistic and has ADHD, and has struggled to find a graduate job for 2 years. And Nat of the Exceptional and Individuals Agency, which supports neurodivergent people in the workplace, finds this story sadly unsurprising. So Daniel looked at whether a gameplay or puzzle-based online test set by some employers might help, but the truth is what works for one individual might not work for another. And the film ends with some solid advice on how to make sure you're ready for the job hunt in a world which is fast becoming dominated by tech. And if you're certain the computer has it wrong for reasons that aren't fair, you ought to call it out. So it says no technology is perfect, and what's affecting you today could be affecting far more of us down the line if left unchecked. So that's an interesting for you as well, Sarah. Have you considered, is AI something, algorithm, something that the trust might look into in the future, automating some of this?
Yeah, so that there are programs and there is software available that some services like mine use at the triage stage of the process, where somebody first calls us to kind of, to help direct calls and work out what's going on. It's not something we've gone down the line of, because the feedback we've had and kind of view within our team is that actually when people contact us, they want to speak to a human being. And we don't want people to be put off by that. Again, it may be something that becomes an option, I guess, in the future. But the point that's made in there about neurodiversity is interesting, because my first thought when you were talking there about the interviews was, well, what about differently abled people who may need adjustments made in an interview, and how would that work for them? Because if it's only being marked in one way, that may be really disadvantaging people who may be able to do really well in those jobs.
Yeah. And have you had experience of that with clients who've used your services as well? You've had to adjust for that?
Oh yes, I mean we adjust for whatever the patient needs. Every person is an individual, so as part of the assessment, it's around finding out how they best want to access things, how they like to communicate, how they like to learn, how they want to receive information. So we're very used to adjusting, and I guess that's something perhaps that AI is perhaps not quite there with, in terms of making those adjustments and those nuances at this stage. I'm not going to say it never will, but at the moment I think it can't respond as quickly and as empathically perhaps as a human being would in that situation.
I think psychological services are bound to be among the most challenging fields of all for AI.
I think surely. So, yeah. And I would think occasionally maybe you come across somebody who wants to use a video consultation, but you actually think, no, actually I need to see them face to face.
Oh yes, that definitely happens.
Pick up
that
more.
Definitely happens. Yeah, and so we might start off with video, and part of the conversation will then be about, could we work towards a face-to-face appointment for whatever reason that might be.
Yeah, sure.
But at least you've got contact with them, which you might find difficult to have in that circumstance otherwise.
Well, that's what we always say. You can't work with somebody who's not in the appointment with you. So get them there first, however you need to, and then you can work on the next part, can't you?
Yeah. So another story you picked up is called Debt of the Bank Branch, How Going Cashless Leaves Millions Financially Stranded. And this is by Sarah Dawood on the New Statesman website. And the story is that when 86-year-old David's local cooperative bank branch in Bedfordshire closed in 2020, he was left without access to financial services. He used to go into the bank with a carer to withdraw money and pay his bills. Living with neurological disabilities, he lacked the dexterity needed to use a computer or smartphone, so now his only option is telephone banking. But with a disposable income of just £10 per week and wait times up to an hour on a line that charges customers 9 pence per minute, he's forced to hang up early. So he wishes the bank would do more for disabled people like himself. And he says that when my local branch closed, it was a bitter blow. It has put me in a very difficult situation. I can't hold on to the phone for more than 10 minutes because my costs will rise. It can't carry on like this. So that's, that needs to not happen. It's outrageous, isn't it? And it's just wrong in so many ways.
I was exclaiming at the next sentence, Pauline, which is, despite the bank having a free-to-call number for vulnerable customers, David was not made aware of this.
Very bad.
Come on.
Yeah, that shouldn't be happening these days. Yeah.
It's a bit like the story we covered the other week about social tariffs for broadband, where people are in receipt of certain benefits, or there are some other criteria as well, can apply to the main broadband providers, or at least some of them, for much, much cheaper fixed landline broadband. And we just need to make sure these things are known
We'll know
about.
about them. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll just cover, I think, one or two more stories maybe before we finish. And this, I left this one in even though Easter is over, because scams on WhatsApp are happening all the time. And so this is just a classic one that we kind of can flag up. And the story is entitled "Beware WhatsApp links for free Cadbury Easter eggs, chocolate baskets. It's a scam." And this was on. My family were copying this around as well before I said to them, look, it's a scam. If it looks too good to be true, it's bound to be untrue. So this is from a website called that'snonsense.com, saying that fake competitions and giveaways are always popular in the run-up to holidays such as Easter and Christmas. And so the latest scammy scheme was targeting WhatsApp users in a bid to lure them to scammy marketing survey websites seeking their contact details. Despite the claims in the link in the WhatsApp message, there are no free Cadbury products on offer, and this bait is used to lure WhatsApp users into doing two things. Firstly, to share the same link to their own friends on WhatsApp, and second, to visit marketing websites where they're told to complete surveys in order to grab their prize. The article does say these scams are more frequently encountered on Facebook, where crooks actually set up fake Facebook pages, or contact Facebook users telling them they've won a prize. But more recently, they've been exploiting messaging apps like WhatsApp to spread their schemes. So if you do click on the link, you're initially taken to a page that claims if you want to get your hands on your free Cadbury Easter basket, you need to spam your own friends with the same link. So that's obviously how the scam spreads. And then when you send the same link to enough friends, you're directed to marketing websites that ask you to complete surveys, and they then harvest your personal and contact information, which is used to spam you with unsolicited offers. So you end up getting all these spams that you don't really want for anything. And then if you're still unluckier than that, you get your details sold off to cyber crooks and identity thieves. And so you get even more calls and messages that you don't want to hear. So the moral of the story is, if you see, if it's too good to be true, it probably is untrue. Don't click on the links. Giveaways and promotions are held on the official social media channels or websites of the companies involved, and no legitimate competition is going to force users to spam their own friends in order to enter. And I see these as well on Facebook. With people, Central Parks is a classic one where people say, if you respond to this message and send it to, some friends, you're in for to win a 2-week holiday. And of course, everybody wants that. And, I look at it now and I just go with my friends, don't even start. It's just, nobody's giving anything away. So yeah, there's a good on screen now. Sweyn has got the That's Nonsense websites showing infographic, if you like, of the links. Unexpected link offering freebies. 2, ask you to spam your friends. 3, ask you to complete surveys offers. And 4, if you want to know how to get information trending on scams, follow at That's Nonsense on Twitter and other social media sites. So yeah, so you get enough warnings, I think. So it's good for people to bear that in mind. I think have we kind of run out of time, Sweyn?
I think we're nearly at time. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's. I think we'll call it a day there. Having come back on after 2 weeks away, we've got plenty of stories lined up. So we hope our listeners and viewers will join us again in next week and the following weeks. Thanks very much, Sarah, for joining us. We do direct people towards our visitors online. So where's the best place for people to find you if they wish to follow up with anything?
So our website is a good place to look, which I think Sweyn has the details on. It's Stoke Wellbeing, or you can find us on Twitter. The best place, our team account is at SST Wellbeing.
Okay, great. Thanks very much for joining us, and everybody have a great week. Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you.